Welcome to War on Comic. I'm Roger, and let's get started. In the heart of Donbass, Ukraine is holding on by its fingernails in Pokrovsk, the logistical knot Russia craves to capture in order to shatter the Eastern Front. As thousands of Russian soldiers press with ferocious advances, Kiev urgently dispatches reinforcements, special forces land in helicopters under enemy fire, and elite brigades like the 79th Independent Air Assault Brigade and the 25th Siecheslav Air Assault Brigade counterattack in streets turned to ruins. But they're not just defending. Ukraine is counterstriking deep into Russian territory, hitting key refineries with drones that travel more than 1,500 kilometers. Today, a coordinated attack with Ukrainian missiles and artillery struck the Volgograd refinery, which processes 15.7 million tons a year, 5.6% of all Russian oil. Secondary explosions lit up the night, halting operations and fueling Moscow's fuel crisis. This isn't an isolated battle, it's a dual pulse. Resistance in Pokrovsk to save Donbass and surgical strikes inside Russia to raise the cost of the invasion. The war is accelerating. Watch how Ukraine turns defense into offense, and the Eastern Front into a deadly chessboard. Darkness shrouded Pokrovsk like a shroud. It wasn't peace, but the pause between bombs that heralded the next assault. At 4 a.m. on November 5th, on the outskirts of this Donetsk city, a Ukrainian convoy snaked along bombed-out roads, laden with ammunition and fresh troops. The truck's engines growled low, masked by the easterly wind carrying the smell of burnt cordite. For hours, the drivers had dodged Russian drones patrolling the sky like hawks. Every kilometer was a calculation, detours around 5-meter-wide craters, blown bridges forcing 10-kilometer reroutes. The city, once home to 60,000 souls, was now a labyrinth of rubble. Only 1,000 civilians remained, trapped between basements and sirens. Russia wanted it for its railway and highway junction, the gateway to the 81% of Donetsk Moscow has controlled since 2014. Losing it would open the road to Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, Ukraine's last bastions in the region. But Ukraine wasn't yielding, not yet. Inside an improvised command post beneath an abandoned factory, General Alexander Syrsky reviewed digital maps. Screens flickered with drone data, Russian positions infiltrated in the urban center, advances of 64 buildings in the last 24 hours. Reinforcements en route, he muttered. There was no time for doubt. Russia was deploying 11,000 soldiers on the Axis, 8 for every Ukrainian defender. Motorized infantry, backed by aviation, dropping guided bombs at minute intervals. The Russian General Staff claimed Ukrainian battalions were trapped in cauldrons in Pokrovsk and Kupiansk, suffering notable losses. But Syrsky knew the truth. His troops were repelling assaults, driving enemies from the city's north. Units like the police White Angels evacuated civilians under fire, sweeping areas with mine detectors. In nearby Kostiantynivka, officers loaded elderly residents into armored vehicles as shells whistled 200 meters overhead. Morale didn't falter, it was raw survival. At 5:30, the sky tore open. Ukrainian Black Hawk helicopters descended on Pokrovsk's northwestern outskirts, rotors slicing through the morning fog. Special forces leaped out, rifles raised, advancing into gray neighborhoods. Russia saw them coming. Tor anti-aircraft systems fired, but the Ukrainians dispersed into assault groups, using FPV drones to blind enemy turrets. In 20 minutes, they reclaimed 3 residential blocks. The 7th Army Corps reported 85 Russians killed in the week. It wasn't total victory. Russia counterattacked in waves, infiltrating infantry into the industrial zone. Urban combat, snipers in shattered windows, grenades bouncing down 3-meter-wide hallways. A dust-covered Ukrainian soldier hauled a BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launcher to an elevated position. He fired. The shell arced 2 kilometers, striking a Russian convoy and sending black smoke skyward. But the cost mounted. Zelensky visited the front on November 4th, posing with troops in nearby Dobropilya. Defiant, he admitted. Between 260 and 300 Russians were fighting inside the city. Ukraine responded with M114 artillery, Gara bomber drones from the Predator Brigade. Every strike counted. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones crossed the Volga. In Volgograd, sirens wailed. Workers evacuated as flames devoured pipelines. National capacity reduced by 5.6%. Russia formed patriotic reservist units to patrol skies, but Ukraine pressed on. 160 attacks on Russian oil in 2025. In Ryazan, a refinery for military aviation damaged. In Bryansk, the Kremny microchip plant for missiles hit for the third time. Production halted. The war globalized. European sanctions on Russian refineries, China condemning restrictions. Ukraine sold surplus weapons in Berlin and Copenhagen to fund drones. Pokrovsk at dusk. Smoke veiled the horizon. A Ukrainian convoy entered, unloading crates of ammunition. Soldiers embraced, exhausted. Russia pressed, but Ukraine resisted. Counterattacks drove out infiltrators. The flag flew again. In the east, Donbas hung in the balance, but Kyiv wasn't just defending. It struck back, carrying fire to Russia. Refineries burned, supplies dwindled. Winter approached, with Ukrainian blackouts and Russian rationing. The scales tipped. Ukrainian precision against Russian mass, systems over numbers. This was the war revealed, not in grand battles, but in broken streets and silent drones. Pokrovsk didn't fall, it resisted, and the deep strikes continued, raising the price. If Russia wanted Donetsk, it would pay with its rear. Night fell. Tomorrow, a new assault. But Ukraine was ready. To stay informed by Comic on War, subscribe and hit the notification bell until the next evacuation alert or fire in the hole.